Okay, Susan, I think we're ready to start. It's now noon. So welcome everyone to Lunch and Lawn. During our session, all participants will be muted to help reduce unwanted background noise and echoing. So please remain muted when you're not speaking. Master gardeners share science-based information about gardening and horticulture topics. Our Lunch and Lawn program is sponsored by the Fairfax County Master Gardener Association, which operates under the Virginia Cooperative Extension program of Virginia's two land-grant universities, Virginia Tech and Virginia State University. Today is the 6th and final Lunch and Lawn session for 2020. My name is Jenny, and I'm a member of the Fairfax County Master Gardeners Association. I'm joined today by fellow members Hillary, hi Hillary, and Susan, hey Susan. And as you can see, our agenda today is divided into 3 parts. Our first is the main topic of winterizing your lawn, and next is the identity and control of 2 weeds of the week. And finally, we'll discuss questions we received during registration. And if we have time left at the end, we'll answer questions in the chat box. So this program was developed as a virtual counterpart to Fairfax County Master Gardeners' home turf program. Without the ability to do in-person turf evaluations, our goal had been to help county residents understand how to manage and improve the health of their turf. We chose these topics because they were best done in the fall and they covered the fundamentals of turf care. And also the weeds of the week were what are out there now. These sessions were recorded, so if you missed any or simply want to review a topic, they are on the VCE-Fairfax YouTube channel, which is referenced at the end of this talk. And so today I'm wrapping up with what to do for winter lawn care. And Susan will cover Nimblewell and Hillary the Japanese clover. So fall is a beautiful time of year and we all get excited about fall colors. This is also a signal that the trees are going dormant and shedding their foliage. It's also a signal of the work ahead for us as homeowners. Viewing leaves from nature's perspective, however, shows a different purpose. The leaves accumulating in our trees form natural mulch that helps suppress weeds and protect the roots from temperature extremes. The leaf cover also provides food and shelter for birds, butterfly larvae, and lots of animals and insects big and small. Leaf litter is also food for worms and microorganisms, which break down the organic matter and add nutrients and microbes that help build soil and feed plants. While fine for forests, thick leaf layers covering your lawn can form a suffocating mat, and that's the problem. If we bag these leaves for trash, it's headed for our landfills. The EPA estimates that leaves and yard debris make up about 13% of solid waste in landfills, and this organic waste breaks down, releasing methane, a greenhouse gas that's more potent than carbon dioxide. So what can we do? Instead of throwing our leaves away, many experts recommend recycling leaf litter back into our yards. So the easiest way to recycle leaves is raking them into our garden beds as mulch or using them for composting and making your own leaf mold. A major labor saver is to mow over your leaves to shred them. Like grass clippings, they add to your soil health and reduces weeds and yard waste. A Missouri State University study found that after 3 years of mulching, dandelions and crabgrass emergence was decreased by almost 100%. There are mulching mowers that have double blades and can handle thicker leaf layers, but a standard mower should be fine if you mow regularly. For a thicker layer of leaves, you may need to do a few passes to shred the leaves down to about 1/2 inch. They should disappear into the lawn, but if you can't see the lawn for the leaves, make another pass and bag those clippings and then use them. You will want to bag most of these leaf clippings if you're planning to do a last lime treatment or a nutrient application, because you want these products to be in good contact with the soil. Doing this gives you a 3-fold benefit: less work, less weed pulling, and less money needed for fertilizer. And lawn care services will also be mulching leaves into your lawn and bagging any excess for disposal. So run out and reclaim those bags and put them to use. So even if you have a lawn service, the following tools are useful. A good rake, choosing the right one for the job. The wider ones make a quicker work of raking. And if you can go out and look at newer rakes, materials that make them lighter and stronger may also help reduce the strain on your back and easier labor. Tarps make collecting and managing leaves easier. And weeding tools, sorry, weeds never sleep. I know I've seen some hairy bittercress popping up. And if you saw Miriam's presentation last session, you won't want to let that one get away from you. Take a little time each day and you'll be glad you did in the spring. Now, leaf blowers save labor, but they're a little difficult to control. So because you don't want to blow away mulch and soil. So be careful with that one. And leaf mulchers are an investment, but they will help you reduce the leaf volume and make it easier to reclaim them and put nutrients back in your yard through either as a mulch amendment or in your leaf mold. And then the snow shovel is just here to as a word of being prepared. There are many to choose from, but the basics to look for are a durable construction, an ergonomic design, a wide shovel blade, and a steel wear strip for better scraping. So this next chart shows the cool weather chart on turf growth, and it's used as a reminder on its biology, because you can see here, as we go from fall into winter, the root growth is slowing and the shoot growth will soon stop. Because of this, the chief culprit for winter lawn disease is the late application of fertilizers, because this encourages blade growth when grass should be preparing for dormancy. However, there's still time to do a few last tasks before the ground freezes. If you haven't done a soil test in the past 3 years, you might think of doing one now and be ready for the spring. You can still add lime and nutrients based on what your soil test tells you. You can still core aerate, though it is best done during that prime root growth window for cool season turf. And then dethatching if you see a layer greater than 1 inch, which is typically only needed every 4 or 5 years. And this is because thatch impedes the nutrients, water, and oxygen from getting to the turf roots. And it can also create in winter moist chambers where fungal spores can grow. You'll want to reduce your watering to 1 to 2 times per month, since grass isn't absorbing as much water now. And cool soil can become soggy, which invites soil compaction. And if you have an irrigation system, adjust your timers accordingly. And for your final mow of the season, cut your grass about a ½ inch shorter than normal. This helps to prevent the grass from forming mats, which reduces air circulation, especially under snow. So winter lawn diseases are caused by fungal pathogens and are affected by weather conditions. Oops, next slide, and what is the, and particularly the practice of applying fertilizer in the late fall. Pink snow mold is one of the 2 that we can see now, and it forms circular dead spots up to a ½ inch in diameter. And as the name suggests, the edges where the living mold is pink. The pathogen, it grows in cool, wet conditions, like under a layer of snow, but snow is not a requirement. And this affects primarily cool season turf. The pathogen is active from 32 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, so you might see this well into the spring. And temperatures above 70 degrees inhibit the growth, and so it shuts down its progress. So the key to control is not to apply nitrogen fertilizers in the late fall. The next is spring dead spot. and it is a primarily affects warm season turf. It appears in circular patches from 6 inches to several feet in diameter and remains dormant until the turf greens up in the spring. The roots, stolons, and rhizomes are dark in the affected areas. And once again, applying nitrogens in nitrogen fertilizers in the late fall is the chief culprit. Conditions as well, such as poor factors such as poor soil drainage, over irrigation, excess thatch accumulation, and soil compaction also contributes to fostering this disease. And both of these diseases tend to recur in the same spot and either spread or increase in size. Following healthy lawn practices are the best way to control both. And as a last resort, you can apply fungicides in the fall. And the disease references at the end of this talk have a very informative discussions on the fungicides. On this slide, we see winter injuries that are weather dependent, not biological. So we may or may not see them on a year-to-year basis. Most are caused by sudden temperature changes where the weather cycles between freezing and thawing, and this is what causes damage or kills plant tissues. So this is a list of injuries possible, and the only two conditions that you have some control over are soil compaction and injury from deicing salts. On the deicing compounds, all chemical deicers act by lowering the freezing point of water, which is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. They prevent ice from bonding to surfaces by coating the surfaces with a layer of brine or salty water, which has a lower freezing temperature. They're a concern because their use can damage the environment, structures, plants, and be harmful to pets. So it's important to use them sparingly. There are many types, but this chart shows the most commonly used chemical salts. The first column shows the minimum effective temperatures, which range from 25 degrees Fahrenheit down to 22 degrees Fahrenheit. The second is how quickly they start to act. And the third is how damaging they might be. Their chemical reactions with concrete, brick, and stone surfaces can be extremely damaging. And they leave white chalky residue on brick and stone materials in particular that can take months to wash away. And the final column indicates how harmful they are to plants, including turf. And while pets aren't on this chart, if you have pets that have walked on surfaces treated with deicers, please wipe their paws before they can lick them. Remember, it's too late to buy deicers if it's already snowing. So buy your product of choice early and store it in a moisture-tight plastic container because deicers keep well if they are kept dry. So next slide. Most of us live in neighborhoods governed by HOAs, and probably all in our area have snow removal rules. So that must be obeyed. So snow shoveling is still the best eco-friendly form of snow and ice removal. Snow blowers are a back saver, but don't apply deicers before using one because you'll risk blowing that deicer straight into your lawn and landscape. Always follow the manufacturer's instructions because these aren't intended to melt a layer of snow or a thick layer of ice. Anti-icers are just a liquid form that you can spray on. And part of the manufacturer's instructions are to apply this before you do have snowfall. They should work within 15 to 30 minutes, but if you aren't seeing it, it might be that the temperature is lower than that product's effective range, as we saw in the last chart. You can mix the deicer with a little water or wet sand to start the melt process. The advantage of adding sand is that it also aids traction. When you use sand, though, be careful not to use too much. It can wash into storm drain systems, causing clogs and increasing sedimentation in our waterways. And birdseed is another biodegradable option, and the birds will really appreciate you. But please don't use kitty litter. I know it's a popular solution, but it dissolves into a gooey mess, and this also gets into our storm drain system. So the last tasks for preparing your yard for winter is to remove all the debris or all things from your lawn. Leaving debris like leaves and branches, toys and furniture can smother the grass and cause soil compaction. This also creates conditions that invite disease, insects, mice, and other damaging pests. Second, draining water from all your watering systems will help you avoid costly repairs. You should watch the weather and shut down your system at least a week ahead of the first freeze. So that means clearing all the water out of your system, your sprinklers, hoses, and disconnecting your hose from your hose bibs and making sure your hose bibs are shut down properly. I mean, everyone has heard horror stories about burst pipes, and that's what happens when they freeze. Finally, you can reduce potential injuries by just being aware. If you get a frost warning, give your turf a short watering the night before. The moist soil helps insulate the roots. If you have high areas or exposed areas to wind that you typically notice damage, greater damage, erect a wind barrier ahead of time, and that will help. And as tempting as it is to sled or skid over your lawn or frosted grass, please try to stay off. Dormant grass can tolerate some traffic, but a heavily worn path will cause soil compaction, and the turf will be much slower to green up in the spring. And when you're shoveling snow from the walks and drives, spread it around to distribute the weight of the snow, because that can also cause soil compaction. And distributing the snow will also help speed up its melting. And of course, use care when you apply de-icers close to your grass. And one thing I think is nice to do year-round is to keep a yard journal. Put all the things you do, including dates. You'll especially want to remember when you did your major tasks like core aeration, overseeding, or top dressing. In the winter, you might keep track of frost or heavy snows as a reminder of what might have caused any damage you see. And remembering the winter stresses your lawn and plants experienced can help you plan any additional steps needed for a speedy spring recovery. So for more information on the main topics, here are the references I used. And the papers on spring dead spot and pink snow mold are the ones that have the informative discussions on fungicides. So now we're ready to review Weeds of the Week. What do you have for us, Susan, on Nimblewell?
Okay, thank you, Jenny. I want to say one thing very quickly. I love the idea of using birdseed as traction in ice. I never would have thought of that, and I think that is such a cool idea. No pun intended. So, okay, so let's talk about Nimblewell. This is going to be our grass weed for today, and if you want a good tagline for Nimblewell, just remember this is the last to green and the first to brown. This is a warm season perennial grass that won't green up until the weather gets a lot warmer, and then it turns brown at the first frost. And often homeowners think when that happens that something's going wrong with their lawn. Interestingly enough, one of our registers today, Mary, asked whether Nimblewell is a native grass in Virginia. And yes, Mary, it is a native grass. As a matter of fact, Nimblewell is native to a large area of the United States. So if you look at this chart from the USDA, you can see that it grows over most of the United States. And I think this range exemplifies how easily this grass adapts to a wide range of soil and growing conditions. The grass spreads radially through stolons that spread out underground, so it kind of forms this mat-like patch. the leaves are really short and pointed, and they're kind of gray-green in color. And if you look at a leaf bud, the leaf is rolled as it emerges and then it flattens out. When all your cool season grasses are really stressed in the summer, nimblewill is going to be the one out there holding onto the green in your lawn. Now, a lot of people really often confuse nimblewill and Bermuda grass, but there are some very distinct differences between the two. The most obvious is going to be the length of the blade. Nimblewill is like 2 inches long, and Bermuda grass can get up to about like 7 inches long. But another way to look to differentiate is to look at the hairs of the ligula. Those hairs on the nimblewill are going to be really short, and often they're going to be kind of sparse. On Bermuda grass, those hairs are going to be really long and they'll be plentiful. So that's another good way of differentiating between the two. Nimblewill can also spread through seed heads. Now you can see here that these seed heads are contained in this really long, slender, flowering branch, and these can be from like 2 to 7 inches long. These grow at the ends of the branches and from the axils of leaves. And while these heads do flower, these flowers are really kind of small and inconspicuous. The seeds themselves are really small, like 1/20th of an inch. And they're spindle shaped, so they're wide in the middle and then they taper off at each end. But it's fundamentally this root structure that makes nimblewill successful. It's very fine and fibrous. And it's one that when you pull the plant, it easily leaves pieces of the grass behind, thereby absolutely ensuring that the grass will continue to grow. Interestingly enough, nimblewill has no rhizome, so it cannot grow by a rhizome that it doesn't have. But because it goes dormant just as soon as that first frost hits, it isn't unusual for someone to look out at their lawn, see huge brown spots and think, oh my God, I've got brown spot, and then think I need to apply a fungicide. So that's one of the reasons why it's really important to do a full assessment on what is causing problems in your lawn, because if you went out and treated this with a fungicide, you'd be treating a problem that doesn't exist. So the lawn you see here has huge patches of dormant nimblewill, not brown spot. So what can you do if you have nimblewill in your lawn and you do not want it? Well, the first answer is the one that is best for your lawn. Keep it healthy. Make certain you aren't mowing it too short for the kind of grass. Make certain that you're not fertilizing inappropriately for the kind of grass. You should overseed when appropriate to make sure that you have good density. Good density means that your grass is going to crowd out weeds and not give them a chance to grow. And if you do have nimbleweed and it's gone to seed, don't cut that grass and leave those clippings and seed heads in the lawn. You need to capture them. Otherwise, you've just reseeded your nimblewill. And always, as always, our advice is do a soil test to make certain that you have a healthy lawn. You need to make certain you have healthy soil. And the only way to know if you do is to do a soil test to understand what nutrients you have and what might be needed. So what can you do mechanically? You can dig this out. You can get yourself a really good digging tool. You can go out there and you can dig, and you need to make sure you get all of the roots, and you need to make sure you trash it, because you do not want to compost it, because you're just going to perpetuate it. So you can dig it out, and then you can dig it out, and you can dig it out, and well, maybe that's not always very effective, because remember I talked about that fine fibrous root structure. Unless you get all of the pieces, there's a good chance your grass is going to reassert itself in your lawn. So if you do opt to use chemicals, and you could, you can spot treat it with glyphosate. This needs to be applied when the nimblewill is really young and actively growing. So probably you're thinking about doing this in the spring. You just need to be aware that you might have to make continuous treatments in order to fully eradicate it. You might select something more powerful, especially if nimblewill is really prevalent in your lawn. Now, while many of the stronger herbicides would require a professional to do the treatment, homeowners could use something like tenacity or Pylex, that's metrazone or topramazone. Regardless of whatever chemicals you might opt to use, you really just remember to be very careful and realize that these are poisons and they could kill not only your nimblewill, but could also kill healthy turf as well as beneficial insects. So be careful and follow the directions carefully. And if you really want to learn more, here are some resources, some I used and found, and I think have really helpful information. Jenny?
Oh, thank you, Susan. That's, wow, quite a delve into Nimblewell. So next we'll have Hillary talking to us about Japanese clover. Hillary?
And I agree, Susan. That was lots of good information. In my opinion, nimblewill, it may be one of the most pesky turf weeds in this area. So now I am going to talk about Japanese clover, scientifically known as Kummerowia striata, and also known until recently as Lespedeza striata. Those botanists, they do keep us on our toes. Right now, Japanese clover is thriving in many lawns. This is a summer annual in the bean family. It was originally introduced from Asia as a forage for farm animals. And actually, it is still used as forage for animals, as well as hay, erosion control. And since it is a legume, which fixes nitrogen in the soil, it's also used as green manure. The seeds are eaten by many types of birds, and the foliage is eaten by many herbivores, including deer. Japanese clover has become a very common summer weed in our area, mainly because Virginia provides all the conditions that it loves. It thrives in clay. It loves loam and shallow rocky soils, and it prefers a soil pH ranging between 6 and 8, which we have here. And it can tolerate both heat and drought. This weed prefers full sun, and it can be found in fields, open woods, roadsides, and frequently in our lawns. In the early stages of the summer, it has a low to the ground, prostrate, patchy growth habit, looking fairly similar at that stage to spotted spurge. While it's still young, it's not always easy to spot. But as summer progresses, Japanese clover grows up into a wiry, dense weed, approximately 4 to 6 inches high and spreading in mats 15 to 18 inches wide. Its growth habit is both ascending and spreading. Its dark green leaves are clustered in groups of 3. Its stems are purplish, and the flowers, which are pink and purple, appear in the late summer. And here is the headache. Japanese clover is an extremely adaptable weed to lawn conditions, especially when lawns are thin, with exposed soil readily available. This weed does not mind being mowed regularly. Being cut down to 2 or 3 inches simply encourages it to become more dense, and this prostrate mat is supported by a very strong taproot. The best line of defense is a dense, healthy turf, which prevents this weed from becoming established in the first place. One of the questions that we received this week was from Lori, asking how to control or eliminate Japanese clover. To get rid of it, hand pulling or using a good weeding tool, especially while the soil is damp, that makes a big difference, are the best mechanical methods. These methods also apply to landscape beds. Now, I happen to have a most favorite tool which works extremely well on this weed. It's called a cobra head, very aptly named. Chemical treatments should always be used as a last resort. If you choose this method, a spray form of selective post-emergent broadleaf weed killer can be applied while these weeds are actively growing. Look for a product containing one of the following active ingredients: 2,4-D, MCPP, Mecoprop, dicamba, or triclopyr.
So Hillary, that Copra is a pretty mean looking tool, but I've never used one. Can you show us how you actually work with it?
It is a wonderful tool. It's steel and it's very strong. It's very easy to manipulate. And the shape of it, the size of it, as I said in my talk, damp soil is best, but it's very easy to dig under a taproot or under a fibrous root and just pull it up. And even for shallow rooted weeds, it's also good just for loosening the surface. So it really,
wow,
tool is magic.
It does look like a cobra, deadly.
It does look like a cobra.
So now we have questions that we received through our registration. So Hillary, how about you take this first one?
Yes, Sarah asked, what is the best grass for a plush lawn year-round? This is the $64,000 question when it comes to growing a beautiful lawn. Whoever can discover or breed a type of grass that will provide a plush lawn year-round will make millions of millions. For the most thorough explanation about choosing the best grass, this subject was covered extremely well in our Lunch and Lawn Session 3, which can be found at fairfaxgardening.org under Lunch and Lawn, and then going to the online sign up. Because Northern Virginia is a transition zone, neither cool season nor warm season turf will provide problem-free lawns. Cool season turf generally suffers summer stress, but it's green through the cold months. Warm season turf is lush and green throughout a hot summer, but it turns brown from October till May. The best solution is to choose between a cool or a warm season turf and then manage it to provide maximum health and appearance. And don't give up. Don't give up yet, because research is ongoing for developing turf with the best traits of both.
Well, you said it, Hillary. Whoever figures this one out will be very wealthy, the way we love our lawns. So next, Susan is going to talk about one of her favorite weeds, ground ivy.
Oh yeah. Ground ivy is, and I love the way we say this, because every weed we talk about, it's like one of the toughest weeds to control in our lawns, but ground ivy kind of holds on to its claim to that pretty strongly, as it holds on to our lawns. Now, fortunately, we have talked about this in a little more detail in previous Lunch and Lawn. So Lunch and Lawn 3, we talked about ground ivy, and then we also have an information sheet on it at fairfaxgardening.org, and those links are there for you. So how do you control it? Culturally, you're really just trying to maintain the healthiest lawn you can. Do your aeration, your overseeding, your top dressing, your fertilizing. Keep your lawn nice and healthy and thick, water right. And if you do that, then you may not eliminate it, but you're certainly going to be able to make your lawn a more difficult place for ground ivy to take hold. And if you've got a good lawn and you see ground ivy, pull it immediately. Pull it when it's small, when it hasn't gotten a good hold, and then be vigilant. Keep pulling it, keep looking for it, and eventually, hopefully, you can get it out of your lawn, unless of course your neighbor's lawn is full of it, and then you have a different problem. But if you do have a different problem and you do need to use some sort of chemical, as always, chemicals are going to be a last resort, because as I said earlier, if you're killing one thing, you may be killing something you didn't want to kill. So be very careful. But you could look for something that with the active ingredients dicambra, triclopyr, or pinoxylum. So if you try these, just read the instructions and use them carefully and appropriately.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Susan. Next, we have a question from Sharon. Are you on the line, Sharon? She was asking that she has so many types of weeds in the grass, and how does she get rid of them, and what type of grass is best for clay soil? Well, unfortunately, without photos of the weeds, it was hard to really respond to this or for the condition of her lawn. But the weeds of the week have fact sheets for common broadleaf as well as grass type weeds, as mentioned earlier, on the Home Turf Program link at fairfaxgardening.org. But don't despair, because many of these weeds will die back after the first frost, but their seeds do remain, and they'll be ever ready to grow. So when they return, like Susan mentioned for ground ivy, pull them when they're small and when they're less abundant. So many of the soils in our area are clay, unless they've been heavily amended. And the type of grass you'd want to plant, it depends on the amount of sun that your potential lawn area or the area that you are trying to grow lawn receives in a day. Most grasses would prefer over 6 hours of sun per day. And then the look is another aspect of it. What type of look do you prefer, and how much work are you willing to invest, as well as resources in time and money to do the right fillers or amendments, et cetera, But most of all, following the best practices for healthy turf, such as soil test, aeration, overseeding, and top dressing, plus fertilizer, will eventually get you there. Because remember, growing lawns is a continuing process. It's not one and done. So I hope this answers your question, Sharon. Okay, and next we have a question from Karan. So Karan, are you online today?
Yes, I am.
Hi. Well, thanks for your question. You asked, what is the Virginia Cooperative Extension or the Fairfax County Master Gardener Association position on lawn supplements, such as biochar, seaweed, humic, or fulvic acids? Are they helpful, harmful, or useless? Well, I have to say, on the whole, supplements are beneficial. Most have been through extensive trials and tests and review at Virginia Tech and other institutions. So in your query, Karen, how are you using some of these?
No, I mean, I was just wondering if they were worth, some of them are fairly expensive. And I was
Exactly.
if they do anything, if they support, they have all kinds of claims associated with them, and some of them sound like, the nutrient supplement industry for human beings. And I'm never sure about those claims. They cure everything from balding to limping, And
so these supplements are additive to a healthy soil practice or turf practice. They're not a substitute. And they act by promoting root growth and thereby tolerance to stress. And they also promote a beneficial microbial growth, and that in turn improves your soil health. But also, as you may have noted, that improper application may harm turf, and cost is also a factor. Now, the one thing that you included that we found fascinating was the topic of biochar. This is a charcoal-like material produced by burning organic matter at high temperatures without the presence of oxygen. Its use as a soil amendment was pioneered by pre-Columbian Amazonians, and it's still found in the ground that they farmed some 500 years later. While its benefits for the soil are numerous, its current commercial interest is in its ability to sequester carbon dioxide, which is thought of as a potential solution to climate change. We can't do justice to this topic in a few short minutes, so we think it's really worth exploring this in the spring, where we can bring you a more complete picture, including its pros and cons. But to answer your basic question, Karan, that they are beneficial. You just have to follow the instructions, as with anything that you are applying to your soil.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Sure. Okay, so I think we have a few more minutes. Do we have anything, any questions in our chat?
We do. The question has come in about soil testing. Is it too late in the season to have my lawn soil test?
No, it's not actually. As long as your soil isn't frozen, you can still conduct a soil test. And I would recommend it because, that just sets you up for your plan of action in the spring, especially in our area where we have acidic soils. You might be applying quite a bit of lime, and lime applications, you can only put so much at one time on the ground because it cannot absorb more than 50 pounds per 1,000 square feet at a time. And so if you have a lot to apply, you'll have to do it once every month. But then once that's done, you are good until perhaps 3 years later, when you would test your soil again. So thanks for that question, because as we were saying, we need a soil test to guide us in our turf management.
And the follow-up would be, in these days of COVID, where can you find a soil test kit?
If you go to your local library, you can, they have them inside their library. You could call ahead and ask if they would be able to provide it at curbside, or some of the major garden centers also have the soil test kits available. And you would mail that yourself to Virginia Tech Laboratories, and they will provide you with an analysis that gives you the pH and the nutrient levels within your soil. But you need to be sure to fill out the form correctly, because they are going to do the test according to the application you select. So if you're interested in your lawn, don't put a vegetable garden, because those are very different results.
We have another question, which is about the quantity of mulch. And the question is about using leaves for mulch, but is there what to do with the excessive amount of leaves? One of our respondents says, I bag 200 55-gallon bags of leaves each.
Oh, wow. I feel very sorry for that's a lot of work. But the leaf mulcher that I mentioned, that can reduce the volume of leaves 11 to 1. So a 55-gallon bag of leaves kind of squishes down very, very small. And one of the things that I had been reading about is leaf mold, creating your own leaf mold. So you can construct a large bin just out of chicken wire, squared off, and just start dumping it in there as you kind of shred things down. It takes a couple of years to actually compose to that really luscious kind of black gold, but it's an easy way, and you can keep pulling more weeds on top.
Yeah, I built a 3-section leaf bin contraption this year, but that will capture just a small percentage of what actually comes down.
Yeah. So back to the question that you did, do you also mow over some of your leaves, or do you rake all your leaves off before you mow?
I have a Billy Goat lawn leaf vacuum that, you know, has a huge bag behind it. And from there, I put it into plastic bags. I tried taking it over to the vacant lot next door, and the neighbors threw a fit. So that didn't work. And ultimately, you know, at my advanced age of considerably over 40, I just have to turn it over to a crew, and they take it away. But of course,
Yeah, well,
then you lose everything.
unfortunately, that might have to happen, but if you can do as much as you can, that always helps. Also, another thought is contact the community gardens to see if they could compost some of this leaf matter, because, you know, people are always looking for good organic compost or leaf mold. It's a big problem, and I think, you know, one of the things that we're looking at as a topic for next spring is the biochar, that has the potential of sequestering carbon, and you could put these organic materials through a process called pyrolysis, or burning at a high temperature without some oxygen. And, you know, we may have a method of doing that, but it is so early in that technology that it's hard to predict. But it would be, you know, just worthwhile thinking about how you can help reduce your contributions to the landfill. So does that help?
The answer may be to cut the trees down. I don't know.
Oh gosh, no.
don't do that.
But the homeowners association has also been in touch with the county, because Fairfax County does have, you know, in certain limited areas, and McLean is not one of them, but they did send me instructions on, you know, how many people you need to gather together and what the conditions are, and, you know, how to apply for it. So we're looking into that.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're at the end of our time, so we have a few closing slides to go over. So first is, here is how you get to our home turf program and the weeds of the week. So on fairfaxgardening.org/home turf. Here you can find all of our reference materials, and you know, you can look up each individual weed, and as we start a next season, we'll be adding to this. Next slide. And here is all the Fairfax County YouTube videos that are posting. Our sixth one will post in the next week or so, but we have 5 up there now, and there are over 50 virtual plant clinics. So this has a wealth of information and wonderful, wonderful topics. So please check that out. And finally, thank you for attending. We really enjoyed producing this for you, and we look forward to doing another season in spring of 2021. And we'd like to do a survey to get your input for our next season. So please watch out for it and complete it and return it. And as always, thank you for Virginia Commonwealth or Cooperative Extension and our extension agent, Adria Bordas, for supporting us and sponsoring us in this effort. All right, thank you. And we'll see you next year.